There's not many of those. We've been pushing them for years. Can't do it. These guys are so wonderful person. He's a team player.
Okay, guys. You guys want to come up? Whoever wants to come up.
Okay, I'll just real quick because then Mary will start the show. Hello, everybody. First, I want to introduce you to Ariane Curtis, who's new superintendent at work.
Hi.
She's
Nice
not
to
been
meet
here,
you.
so I want to introduce you to that.
Very nice to meet you.
And thanks again. We really wanted to, again, thank you for doing the grant, but also there was some summer planning that was part of that, and then the process that's going on and continuing going on. So we thought Mary could share some of the data on that, and then we have one of our case managers kind of share a little bit more what's going on, and then if there's any questions for us, I won't take a lot of your time, but again, the process has really been well, and a couple other outgrowths of things. The CHIP report that comes on, this is the first time ever that all school districts participated in that, so the data really is, probably the best data we've ever had for that. So that, and Joe has come to our meeting and kind of shared some of that information, which I think is really a good piece. Other outgrowths of this is meeting with guidance counselors now, or school counselors, I'm sorry, school counselors.
Name change there, Russ.
Aging myself, and I've been corrected a few times by them.
Okay.
But we do meet with them, but we also had an opportunity, was it a month ago, Mary? I think it was, that we had all of the agencies that can help families and stuff in town at Maplewood, every school district, we had like 38 of the counselors that were able to come. So this has actually, there's been other, I'm not going to say unintended things, but things that we didn't expect to have happen that have actually happened that have been more positive out of this outgrowth. So a lot more outreach for families, a lot more education for our folks, and a lot of help for our kids and families and teachers. So Mary, we'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to give you some brief stats on what we're doing this year. So we have started with 6 case managers covering all the districts. So far they have started working with 211 kids. And these are mainly new kids. They tried to wrap everything up with the kids that they saw last year. And of the 211 kids that they're seeing currently, 55% have been impacted by trauma. So a lot of traumatized children out there that they're working with. And 34% have been impacted by AOD, by drug and alcohol. So either the parents are using it or the kids themselves are using it. So we're trying to work with the families to refer them to the appropriate places. Certainly the kids that have been impacted by trauma, we're trying to link them to therapy, or if they're already in therapy, like Kaylee was just telling me in supervision this morning about working with the Coleman therapist to give that therapist additional information that they might not just get from the family, but she went and met with the therapist and was able to update her and give her some valuable information.
You know, Mary, what's the difference between trauma? I mean, I know that, and then drug. Are some of these trauma children also?
Right,
drug?
yeah, right. What we've considered, you're right, a lot of the trauma also is because of the drug and alcohol, because when you're an addict, you just can't take care of your kids the way you should. You don't keep them safe. They get exposed to a lot of things. So a lot of the kids are not even living with the parents. They're living with grandparents or great-grandparents. They've seen a parent overdose. They've had parents die from drug and alcohol.
How do you differentiate though, like between the 55% and the 34%? Like
I
where
would
a child falls?
If they've been impacted by AOD, there's probably been trauma there. Okay. So these could be some of the same kids.
Okay, so they may be counted twice.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And then I just wanted to introduce you to one of our prevention case managers, Kaylee Rogers. She works in Kent and Field School District.
Hi, Kaylee.
Hello.
All right. So, as Mary said, I work in 2 school districts, Kent and Field, trying to do a lot of good things. So last year, I worked with 66 children and their families. And in the schools, I would collaborate with staff, help teachers come up with some helpful interventions for some of the behavior problems that they're exhibiting in class, and how do we get them regulated and ready to learn. I did social emotional skills building as well with the kids. So in individual sessions, we were working on things like coping skills, social skills, like things like what's healthy personal space and, you know, what constitutes a stranger and things like that. Blurting out in class, those types of social skills, just very fundamental things that some kids might be missing. I've sat in on school meetings with teachers and parents and the kids to kind of help come up with some solutions in the school. I ran a zones of regulation group at one of my schools for kids that were exhibiting just not being able to hold themselves together. And I got really good feedback from the teachers, so that's like always really cool. And also I just felt like I was an added support for them in the school. Like if I was there on that day and they were going through something, I was just one more person that they could go to hang out with and chill out and calm down and go over their coping skills and be ready to go back to class and ready to learn. And I also work a lot with families. I have pointed families. Sorry, I might get a little emotional too. So I just see a lot. But I've pointed families in direction of getting shelter because they're homeless. Getting them signed up for different, thank you, I'm sorry. Getting them signed up for different kinds of benefits like PMHA and TANF and food stamps. Just a lot of parents are trying, they just need help to get on their feet.
This is why you're good.
I'm sorry to not.
No, don't apologize.
So I do go in the home and I work a lot with the family, and that's why I like to describe this job as being kind of like the bridge between school and home, because the school districts are amazing and all of the teachers and staff, they are like, we're so happy you're here because we would love to go into these homes once the day ends, but we can't. And so that's like kind of where their collaboration with us comes in, because we can. And we take the teachers' feedback into consideration when we're going into those homes and working on things with the family and trying to get them on track so then they can come to school and ready to learn. So that's what's really cool about us, is we can kind of be that bridging person. And also, let's see, so over the summer, so the school year ended, but like we didn't want to just like stop seeing these kids. So for each district we ran skills groups over the summer, and we got a lot of good turnout for them. Parents were able to bring it, and 3 prevention case managers did 6 districts, and 3 did 6 districts separately. And like my group of 3, we did like a coping skills regulation group, and so we got supplies so the students could build coping skills boxes. So every group, they would learn a lesson on things like friendship, on stressful transitions, blended and changing families. And then we would teach like emotions that would be tied to that, and then how do we regulate those. And then they would get a new item to put in their box. So by the end of the summer, they had like 10 to 12 items in their box, things like stress balls. We made calming jars. They got to put bubbles in to practice deep breathing, yoga cards, and the parents were really receptive and excited that the students got to bring something tangible home from those groups too to practice at home. And then this year, all of our caseloads are growing, especially now that we're entering into almost the holiday seasons. So me specifically, I've been connecting a lot of my families to local resources to get help with Thanksgiving and help with Christmas, and I've teamed up with the schools to help get families connected with the schools resources for Christmas help. And one of our prevention case managers in her schools actually has like a basket full of like hygiene products, so her students can use them, you know, pop in if they need it, because a lot of kids, they don't have those things that they need. So we've been doing a lot of the same stuff, just again being that bridge to work with the families and work with the students in school. And I'd like to just kind of wrap up by telling a little story that I'm probably gonna cry, so I'm sorry. But a lot of the times we go through the day feeling like, what are we really doing? Sometimes the progress is slow, and then like things like this happen and you're like, this is why I'm doing it. So I had a kiddo who was just exhibiting undesirable behavior at school. And he has had traumatic experiences growing up, and so I was able to help the family connect him with summer sports because it was something he really wanted to do. And then I got feedback from the family this year, like he's loving it, like we're noticing so much better behavior. He's got amazing male role models in his life with the coaches, but like summer sports are ending and he really wants to do winter sports, but they are in such financial hardship, they're like, we don't think it's gonna happen. So that's what's cool about working with both the school and the home, because I was able, with collaborating between the school and community members, I was able to connect the family with winter sports and get him set up. So he's gonna be able to participate at like almost no cost to the family at all. So that was really exciting. So it's always a good day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, but I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You know what I like? You take ownership of this. You said my schools. You didn't say the school or field school or against school. You said my schools.
And that's one thing that I've always told Mary is like I just feel like I'm one with them, like when I walk in.
And you're about their age, right? I mean, so.
So yeah,
We're young ones.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for funding this program because it's been just amazing.
Thank you. This is what we need to hear, feedback and how it's succeeding, and thank you.
Yes. So that's it for me. Sorry, everybody.
So I guess, I mean, that's what's better than testimonials from people that are actually doing it. I guess that's.
Absolutely.
So we really want to also, with Mary's guidance, she comes to all our superintendent meetings as a follow-up every month to talk about what is going on, some of the new data was being seen. So, obviously the superintendents have all been behind us and supported everything that's gone by and trying to make sure it's been a good situation for everybody. So again, I guess we want us to thank you for that and know that the money that you did was spent wisely, and there's been follow-up, there's been follow-through, and from these stories, it couldn't happen without what you guys did.
Russ, we have Rebecca here from Treasurer Sprague's office. Can you just give her a little bit of insight how the peer counselors are different from the school counselors and how that's made an impact so she understands what we funded and how it's working?
So school counselors, again, there's a variety of different changes, but really school counselors are not designed to be therapeutic in nature, right? They're working with kids and they do work with kids that are coming in emotional situations, but they're not trained to be, in the situation of, what Kaylee is doing and connecting all the community resources, even though it's become a real good team. That's not what their job has been or could be. I mean, they're scheduling for classes, working with grades and teachers and things like that. They do lessons in classes too. If it's red flags, depression, they do a lot of different groups, new students. There's so many things, but it's not therapeutic in nature. This has become much more therapeutic and ongoing, and so it's become more of a team between teacher and really administrator, teacher, counselor, prevention case manager, and linking them to other resources that they have within the county. And so that's the therapeutic piece is really a huge difference. That's not what school counselors are trained for. And what they can provide is something that we haven't had. Started this as the second year for it, so we're really kind of ahead of the game. And of course, you're seeing more and more of this, obviously, some legislation stuff that's showing that it's really starting to become a bigger area where we kind of got ahead of it, and appreciate you letting us get ahead of it more. But it is the trauma, the issues that kids are coming with. People would think that it's just high school, secondary. It's not. I mean, we're down to preschool, we're down to kindergarten. Some of the trauma, the stories that every one of the superintendents could tell you is amazing. And then, how do those kids learn? How they get support. So where Kaylee talks about connecting families to resources, they didn't have it someplace. What would they do? So that's Does that help?
Yep.
Any other questions? Or, I mean,
think it's
we have a whole
absolutely
team of superintendents here that, you know, that can share success stories if you like.
No, I really appreciate it, and if you need anything from the state treasurer's office, I'll be here until the end of this, and if there's any projects, any way we can help fund or anything like that, let me know, I'm here. So.
Everybody's working on their wellness plans
Yes.
now, and a lot of what is happening here is obviously hoping to maintain or be boosted. You know, certainly, if this is a long-term need, I'm appreciative of it, but if anything, again, it's a long-term, this isn't gonna go away in a year or two. And, you know, some of that money is 2 years, but grateful for, and hopefully can continue on down the road. But every school, in my position, I'm working with 47 districts. They're all dealing with this to, you know, all kinds of degrees. It doesn't matter what type of school, where it's at, you know, rural, suburban, urban. It's an amazing issue. I don't know, anybody else have anything?
Well, I would say from the state treasurer's office, I hope I know Summit and Cuyahoga County just had a lawsuit over the opioid crisis. I'm hoping more settlements come in and that money's used for this particular purpose. Because I think that part of the effect that I'm feeling, and you know, in our district, I don't want to speak for every district, but I'm assuming it's pretty prevalent, are the trauma caused by that epidemic and kids being raised by their grandparents and you know, kids with no coping skills and that have seen, you know, death and have seen trauma. And we're not ready to quit, and those kids are gonna progress through the system. If they don't get support now, you're talking millions and millions of dollars for special education services, for those kind of things. So you're better getting them now as opposed to waiting later, because the costs are just gonna be astronomical.
I will make a note of that, and then I will also let the Attorney General's liaison know that as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the kind of paying out, paying later piece. The long term, if we can get the students young, when they're in that mode, and again, school districts are all working on these things. You hear PBIS and all these other kinds of things. Every school district does things, but you know, it's trying to learn skills that they're not learning at home or because of what they've seen or they can't. Trying to, again, this is why it's a long-term thing. The 211 students now, that's going to continue to grow, and some may come off the docket, some are going to come on the docket. Those kids aren't just, it's not walk in the door and I'll see you for a half hour, it's gone. I mean, we're talking about years in many of these situations for these kids. And that's, you know, that's why sometimes programs, they come and they go. We have to look systemically long-term, and that's, if I could say anything, this has got to be a long-term look.
You know,
Alice, can you talk a little bit about Governor DeWine in his education budget allocating money for this very purpose?
Sure.
Although I think at the time it wasn't totally clear what those dollars were for. Is that a potential source for the programming that we're doing here in Portage County, or what has been the communication with districts about that funding?
The funds are there. The funds are allocated for 2 years. We know that we have. Now, you can spend them over more years if you have. It's not like it has to be done in the second year, which is kind of part of the plan as we look. Every school district has to put together a plan, what they're looking at, and obviously a lot of the things that we're doing now, we want to continue the funding for, or bringing in other resources. So districts are now putting that plan together. I'm not sure that anybody's really completed those plans, but they're, you know, to be honest with you, there are funds to kind of continue helping what got started here. And our current concern, as everybody's concern, is it's the long-term piece, because this isn't going away. And we don't want to have, just as we kind of shared, and I'm glad that you were able to sustain it for another year for us, is that you see growth, you see these kinds of programs have benefit over years. And so that's what we're hoping, you know, from the legislative department it goes. So
I'd like to respond to Commissioner Clyde's question directly. In Streetsboro, we had to pass a 9 mil levy in May to just keep our budget solvent for 5 years, and with that 9 mil levy passage, we still have to cut $600,000 a year from our budget. So where I'm going with this is this, one of the first cuts I had to make was our full-time prevention case manager that was not funded as part of this grant, it was in addition to this grant. So the wellness dollars, you know, I appreciate Governor DeWine's commitment to education and mental health, but the fact of the matter is, in Streetsboro, our budget stayed flat for 2 years. We received almost no dollars. So we received this mental health dollars, and very frankly, we're using those dollars to keep 2 elementary counselors, school counselors that we put into place because we recognize the mental health crisis in our district, and we all know the terrible events that happened 2 years ago, which perpetuated the addition of these 2 elementary counselors. But very frankly, it's not enough. My budget is flat for 2 years. I'm cutting $600,000 from my budget for the next 2 years or next 5 years, and I had to cut a full-time prevention case manager. And I have no room in my budget if the commissioners, and again, we really appreciate you guys funding this program, but if this program were not to be funded in the future, I would not be able to afford to continue using the prevention case manager that we've been using through this grant, because I have to make my budget balanced. So we do have a mental health crisis, obviously, everywhere in the country, but school funding, we all know that. We all talk about school funding, and until it's addressed adequately, we're going to be forced to make cuts. And unfortunately, the kids that need it the most, our mental health services, are one of the things that are on the chopping block. As long as I'm superintendent in the Streetsboro City School District, I will not ever recommend that our 2 additional elementary counselors are cut. But I have $600,000 a year I have to cut in my budget, and that was with a 9 mil levy. And if our 2 renewals don't pass in a few weeks, I'm going to be right back to where I was at prior to passing the 9 mil levy in May. So I appreciate your funding of this program, but very frankly, if this program goes away, which I understand you guys have a budget, you have limited dollars, but if that goes away, Streetsboro loses a case manager because we cannot afford to add that back into our budget.
So the governor's allocated dollars for this purpose.
Yeah,
Won't
and
cut
each district is
Not
going to
Streetsboro.
determine how those dollars are spent. So you can supplant some dollars, or you add, or whatever, depending on where you are in what your needs are, and budgets and all those kinds of things.
And again, I don't want the commissioners to think that I'm being unappreciative, because I'm not.
No,
I
not at
really
all. You're just
appreciate
stating
that.
facts.
But
Facts.
the fact of the matter is that if this grant goes away, I'm going to be looking at Mary and her organization saying I can't sustain that case manager in my district, because I'm going to keep the 2 elementary counselors that we hired, and I need to keep those dollars and spread those dollars as long as I can in order to fund those, because I'm still cutting $600,000 from my budget a year.
You know why it's so important to get this feedback is we are in an instant gratification society, you know that. And that's why these programs, if you don't show results the first year, well then you're out. And like you said, Russ, it's years and years and years. And what the taxpayers and every level of government, local, state, federal, have to realize is the return on investment. This is investment dollars. It's not an expense. It's money going out, but it's an investment in our future with these children. And that just can't be stressed enough. And it's just educating the public. And like I said, all levels of government, because sometimes if you're distanced from this, you just don't realize it. And this is why it's good for you to come in and reconnect, and
Keep
we
it
need
real
to get
for
the
us.
message out.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you. You keep thanking us, and I appreciate that. But you know, we could give you all kinds of dollars, but if you don't make it work, you know, it's a partnership.
Just as going around with the counselors a month ago, you've got an amazing group of individuals running these organizations that provide. I don't know if you guys know the gems that you have. I mean, Mary sits here,
Yes.
but when our counselors were going around and learning about what kinds of things happen in the county, the people that run these programs take this stuff to heart.
I know that.
So,
Well, look, Kaylee.
I hope you take care of them, you know, because they really do a great job. And there's a lot of support for families, but it's the people behind it. It's the Kayleys and the Marys.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the people that are really connecting, and obviously what goes on in the schools and leadership, they see this happening. So I just, you know, it was really an eye-opening thing for me. I think it was well-received day for even the agencies that were there. It's probably their biggest attended, what I learned was their biggest attended, call it resource fair, whatever you want. But that was an outgrowth of the counselors, because they needed to know.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
so anyhow, you got great people, And the programs, you know, Trim's Advantage, Mary and her team, the team, and Kathy, everybody over there, Coleman, all that they do.
They take it to heart.
They do, and they're
Yes.
doing good resources that we have to continue to support, just like this program.
Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see everyone.
This was our feel-good session.
Yeah.
Everybody needs those.
That's true.
That's true, Russ.
Sure
we
do.
Thanks.
You have enough of the other.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
We all have cortisol of a meeting, yes.
It's a lot for us. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't know you said thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I didn't know you said
Thank you so much.
I'm no lucky, and I still cut
See you later this afternoon. You see that?
Yeah, see you
Long week.
soon.
Thank you very much. Take the rest of the day.
I will let you know. If you want to shoot me an email,
I'll shoot you an email when I get back in the
I'll
office.
link you with the AG's.
I am behind on it. Thank you.
How are you?
It's
No, I don't.
yeah, it's a big mess.
Hey,
I was like,
I'm hoping some of that comes through.
correct, and what I'm keeping is, the best thing for me to do is like, directly talks to the, Great, nice meeting you.
I'm gonna meet with a woman out of Philadelphia.
Okay. Yeah, she'll be at our thing. We're all kind of underfunded massively, so I think this is a local push. It is not in time, I'll just get us on the same page.
All right.
Thanks.
It's always just a smile feeling a lot of my other times.
Yeah.
Doing this.
I don't know,
It's heartbreaking.
yeah, that's the
The
thing.
kids are in this predicament.
Right.
And these
They're
parents
truly,
Oh, things we take for granted sometimes, you know?
yeah.
A little early, so we'll go ahead and recess till 10:30, or hopefully they'll be here at 10:30.
They're normally late. Should I